Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Great news, friends. It is Star Trek The Original Series Day as we get to watch Star Trek The Original Series Season 2, Episode 14, A Wolf in the Fold, or Wolf in the Fold, I believe. No, there. Friends, I can't wait to get into this. It's no mystery. The original series is absolutely one of my favorite series that I'm reacting to. One of my favorite series of all time. I love it. I love it. I love it. Wait no longer, friends. We shall. If you could do me a favor, though, real quick, hit that like button, smash that subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. It greatly helps out the channel. Plus, it alerts you anytime we go live with the original series or any of our sci-fi fare. And of course, if there's anything that we do that you would like early or in its full-length format, the link to the Patreon is in the description. And here are some of the shows that we have in Patreon. And then, friends, of course, if you don't like Patreon, though, you can stick with us here on YouTube memberships. You'll get all of the episodes we do across all of our series. You'll get them a day early, plus any bonus episodes we come up with. But friends, all that is then, and this is now, and now it is a great day, friends, as we watch Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 14, Wolf in the Fold. Prepare to engage maximum warp reaction, and away we go. Is this the music that they had in the cage whenever we had like the Orion sequence? Didn't you all tell me something about belly buttons? Like navels were not like to be shown? That was blatant right there. Blatant navality. These don't look like aliens, so where are we?
The Argelians think very highly of their pleasure.
Oh, now, that's an understatement if I ever heard one. This is a completely hedonistic society.
Oh, here we go. Wow, add to the organic with the handheld. We know Pevney likes to use the handhelds. I'm wondering if they've brought him back out.
I've invited her to join us at the table. I thought you might like to meet her.
No, that's what I call a real captain. Always thinking of his men.
I'm just going to let this play out before I make too many comments. That guy at the other table looks like Agent Loeb from Fringe. Well, they are just in the face of standards and practices, just naval. Bones enjoying a drink. Shocking.
Scotty, in Argelia, they use the lights.
Now, no one has to tell an old Aberdeen pub crawler how to applaud, Captain.
An Aberdeen pub crawler.
There's nothing like a walk in the fog with a bonny lass.
Or handsome gentleman? Why don't we?
You don't mind, do you? I might even get back to the ship on time.
We won't leave without you, Scotty. Relax and enjoy yourself.
Don't forget, the explosion that threw Scotty against the bulkhead was caused by a woman.
Physically, he's all right.
What?
Oh, yes. And matter of fact, considerable psychological damage could have been caused. For example, his total resentment toward women.
What?
Opinion, when he gets back to the ship, he's going to hate you for making him leave Orgelius. But then he will have lost total resentment toward women.
I'm not sure that's how psychology works, but...
Across town, where the women...
Oh, yes, I know the place. Let's go.
We're in a brothel crawl? What are we doing here? Damn, there is some fog out. This is where they find Scotty, like, attacked. Or is Scotty going to be framed for murder?
She's dead, Jim.
Stabbed 12 times.
Time to leave. Time to leave this area immediately. Jim's going to tell us about the final frontier, everybody. Okay, interesting setup. Again, I've learned my lesson with trying to, like, jump onto like a cold open, because I usually get, proven wrong pretty quickly. But with this one, I mean, I don't really understand. Scotty got hurt, apparently, thrown against the bulkhead. It was the fault of a woman, is what they're kind of giving us as the context. And now he resents women. That was... Like, again, I'm not really sure that's how any of that works, but if that's the premise that we're going with, sure. So we're down on this planet to, I don't know, help Scotty get his groove back. I don't, I'm not real sure. But anywho, we got a murder frame going on. There's a lot of people that were looking. We had Agent Loeb, who seemed to be nefarious. Let's see who our director and writer are, though. I mean, money on Joseph Pevney. Robert Bloch. As soon as I see that handheld, Joseph Pevney. Starting to get in your head, Joseph.
Mr. Scott has fallen under suspicion of having brutally murdered an Argelian woman.
Fallen under suspicion? He was found with the murder weapon.
I don't know what to say, gentlemen. Argelius is the last planet in the galaxy. I'd expect a thing like this to happen.
Oh my God, I know that guy from like a million things.
You're not a native of Argelia, sir?
Oh, no. Argelius hires its administrative officers from other planets.
Really?
Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott? Now, are you sure you've never seen this before?
You left the cafe with the girl. Do you remember that? What happened next?
I was up ahead, trying to lead the way. Heard the girl scream. I remember starting to turn. I don't remember another thing.
Scotty, you've got to remember.
Jim.
Yeah, it's not happening, Jim. Mind meld? That would help out.
But you don't just throw him to the wolves. Bones, I have a diplomatic responsibility.
Yeah, you all don't have diplomatic immunity.
They want to arrest him, try him, even convict him. I have to go along with it. But he's suffering from a severe concussion.
It's not promising, Captain. Mr. Scott insists he remembers nothing. But my detector readings indicate that only his fingerprints are on the murder weapon.
Yes, Mr. Hengis.
Hengis.
The outlook for your friend is quite grim.
What is the law in these cases?
The law of Argelius is love.
Okay.
Gentlemen, our prefect, Jarus. Sir,
He'll be your villain for this week.
Gentlemen, before our great awakening 200 years ago, we had ways of learning the truth in such matters. We shall return to them.
The Argelian empathic contact?
You know of this?
Yes, we've heard of it. I assumed it was a lost art.
Prefect, don't you think this should be handled in an official manner through my office?
It shall be handled in an official manner, Mr. Hengist, since I am the highest official.
Ah, see? Semantics.
Gentlemen, let us proceed to my home, where, with the aid of my wife, we shall learn the truth.
And if you haven't noticed by the music cue, gentlemen, this is where the evil starts.
Depending on your wife's empathic abilities, all very well, Prefect. There's only one way we can find out what it is Mr. Scott cannot remember. I can beam down a technician with a psycho tricorder.
Psycho?
This is purely an Argelian matter.
My wife must meditate for a time before she is ready. I see no reason why we should not use that time to good advantage.
Where the hell's Spock?
Kirk Enterprise.
Speak of the devil, and he appears.
Enterprise, Spock here.
Mr. Spock, beam down a technician with a psycho tricorder. Please use these coordinates.
Prefect, the psycho tricorder will require privacy in order to be effective.
There is a small chamber below this room. Perhaps that will suffice.
It's where I store all of my evil things. Don't mind them.
I have already heard talk of closing Argelius to space vehicles.
Well, that would be most unfortunate. Argelian hospitality is well known, as well as its strategic importance as a spaceport.
Ah,
I believe it's the only one in the quadrant.
this is called leverage. Strong arm tactics.
Anyone with any connection with this murder should be present at the ceremony.
Lieutenant Karen Tracy reporting as ordered, Captain.
Lieutenant, I want a 24-hour regressive memory check made on Mr. Scott.
Yes, Captain. Where shall I set up?
Did she say her name was Karen Trace?
Maybe we can clear this thing up.
I certainly hope so, sir. I can't stand this not knowing.
Psycho tricorder. I've never heard of those. Friends, my learned Star Trek historians out there, is this something that is kind of lost to time, the psycho tricorder?
When a man feels guilty about something, something too terrible to remember, he blots it out of his conscious memory.
You said something about not being a psychiatrist, Plum. Let's stick with that. McAvoy.
Are you ready, Sipo?
I am ready.
Lest anyone be confused, I absolutely love Bones now. I poke fun at him quite a bit, but I love him.
Do you have it, Captain?
The knife? No.
But I put it here when we arrived. It's gone.
Get the fuck out of here, man.
He's dead, Jim.
Jesus. Well, I didn't. Lieutenant Karen Trace, deceased. We got a murder afoot, people. Place your bets. Thinking the wife has something to do with it. Spaceport needs closed, blah, blah, blah.
Lieutenant. Captain. Where's...
Lieutenant Tracy is dead, Scott.
Tracy, okay.
Dead? But,
What happened down there?
He obviously doesn't know.
Is that all that happened?
I tell you, I don't remember. I must have passed out.
I mean, come on, this is Scotty. We gotta believe him.
Think, Scotty.
Captain, I've been trying.
Now, the Jim move here is to pretend that he believes Scotty's guilty, to try to flush some people out.
Is there another entrance to that chamber?
Yes, there's a door that leads into the garden, but that's been locked for years.
Locks can be picked, Jim.
Check it.
Keep your head on a swivel there, Plum.
My men picked you up near here. What were you doing?
Please, I know nothing about it. I didn't kill anyone.
You were a musician at the cafe. You played for the murdered girl.
She was my daughter.
What?
The man who did it must be found. He must be punished.
That guy was a boxer at some point. This guy right here.
You left the cafe before.
It's nose. It's definite boxer nose.
Of course he knew her. They were to be married. But he behaved disgraceful.
Really?
And when she went over to the table with these men, I just could not stand to watch, so I left. I went home. Prefect, I didn't kill anyone. I couldn't.
We shall see, Morla.
Couldn't. Why? What makes it an impossibility?
May I continue with the questions, please?
Well, get on with it, man. Just don't stand there.
Need I remind you of the circumstances, Captain? In both cases, your friend Scott was discovered over the body and later claimed to remember nothing.
How did you know that? You were just told about the other killing.
Let the room be sealed so that no one can leave or enter while the ceremony is going on.
Nice. Someone in this room's the killer.
Captain, do you mean my neck is going to have to depend on some spooky mumbo-jumbo?
It's like the Hateful Eight.
What do you suggest, Mr. Sparkle?
Mine not.
Simply that we beam Mr. Scott on board the Enterprise and deploy our computers to learn the truth.
It is absolutely imperative that this matter be resolved according to our Gillian law. Is that clear?
Quite clear, Captain.
I don't like it any more than you do, Spock.
Spock doesn't like it or dislike it. He's just pointing out the facts.
Let the circle not be broken. Concentrate upon the flame which burns upon the altar of truth.
Nice.
Something terrible. I feel its presence. Fear, anger, hatred. Monstrous, terrible evil. Consuming hunger. Hatred of all that lives. Hatred of women.
Nice.
A hunger that will never die. Richard! Richard!
Someone get the knives away from Scotty. What in the... well, I mean, Scotty, you're fucked, buddy.
I don't care what the circumstances indicate, Jim. Scotty simply could not have done it.
Normally, no.
Yeah, Jim, start.
I'm perfectly satisfied Mr. Scott is guilty.
But not responsible.
That is unproven, sir.
We can prove it if he's insane.
Gentlemen.
Mr. Scott.
Sir, I swear to you I did not kill your wife or the other ladies.
By your own admission, you don't know whether you did or didn't.
On the Enterprise, we can make a recording of the registrations of Mr. Scott's conscious and subconscious mind.
Really?
Will your machines tell us this?
No doubt will remain.
Very well. And he who is guilty will face the ancient penalties, barbaric and horrible though they may be.
This guy's not really upset that his wife's dead.
We have beamed aboard the
Look at that beauty.
Each testifier will sit here, place his hand on this plate. Any deviation from the factual truth will be immediately detected.
A trial episode. Let's do it.
Some peripheral abnormalities.
Sufficient abnormalities to account for periods of functional amnesia.
Working. Negative.
No functional amnesia.
I don't remember a thing about the first two murders.
Computer accuracy scan.
Subject relaying accurate account.
What do you remember about the last one?
When the lights went out, the circle was broken. I heard the poor lady screaming. I was near the head of the table anyway. I went toward her, but cold it was, like a stinking draft out of a slaughterhouse, but it wasn't really there. Like a
ghost?
Did you kill Sibo?
No, Captain. That I'm sure of.
He's been saying that right along. I'm sorry, sir, but I must. The knife's still in her back, and blood on his hands.
Yep.
This is a waste of time.
After we take the testimony here...
Let's put everybody into this bad boy.
Prefect, I know you mean well, but I've had experience
For
with
the
this.
time being, we will accept Captain Kirk's explanation of the machine's accuracy as factual. I do, however, reserve to myself the right to make the final determination.
We can ask no more. Mr. Morla, will you take the stand?
Any way that this guy doesn't, like, ping lie for everything, he could be a red herring, too.
I loved her, and she loved me.
That's not true. He might think she loved him, but she didn't. They fought constantly.
Did you kill Lieutenant Tracy?
No.
Did you kill Sibo?
No.
Computer verification scan.
Subject relaying accurate account.
Yeah, it didn't flash. We got a couple other people to cycle through here.
Let's assume that Sibo was a sensitive, that she did sense something evil.
Like a spirit, a ghost, a phantasm?
Monstrous evil, ancient terror.
That devours all life and light.
She said something else, words that didn't make any sense.
Rajic, Baratus, and Kaslak.
Are those names?
Computer, linguistic bank. Definition of following word. Regic.
Working. Negative finding.
Wow.
There is no such word in the linguistics bank.
Affirmative.
What about Uhura?
Reject. Source. Earth. 19th century. Language. English. Nickname for mass murderer of women. Other Earth synonym. Jack the Ripper.
Really?
It is a hunger that never dies.
But all men die.
Yes, all men die, and Jack the Ripper couldn't be alive if he were a man.
Unless he was a spirit. Are they saying that Jack the Ripper was an alien? I'm down with that.
But Sibo said that it feeds on death.
In the strict scientific sense, Doctor, we all feed on death, even vegetarians. Deriving sustenance from emotion is not unknown in the galaxy, and fear is among the strongest and most violent of the emotions.
Everybody screamed, too.
Some man has killed 3 women. We have the prime suspect in our hands.
So is it this guy? Is it Hingis?
Question. Could such an entity within discussed limits exist in this galaxy?
It'll come from Rigel or whatever.
Computer, extrapolate most likely composition of such entity.
Entity would exist without form in conventional sense. Most probable mass of energy.
Could the described entity assume physical form?
Affirmative.
Really? This is like The Thing. Who is it?
I point out that Jack the Ripper slew at will in the heart of the most populous city of old Earth.
And was never caught.
Well, this is fantasy. We all know the murderer is sitting right here with us. I mean, you're trying to cloud the issue. I've got a mind of...
I am satisfied the course of this investigation is valid enough.
Sit down. Me do think you protest too much, Mr. Ripper.
And I suspect preys on women because women are more easily and more deeply terrified, generating more sheer horror than the male of the species.
You do not know women very well, Spock. They are way tougher than us.
When man moved out into the galaxy, that thing must have moved with him.
Baratus. Name given to unidentified mass murderer of women on planet Rigel 4.
Rigel 4.
Murders on Rigel 4 occurred 1 solar year ago.
Hingis.
Would you mind taking the stand, Mr. Hengist?
Why, will not?
Mr. Hengist.
Hengist. There's a T there.
If you are the entity for which we search, what better position from which to kill with impunity? An entity which feeds on fear and terror would find a perfect hunting ground on Argelius, a planet without violence, where the inhabitants are as peaceful as sheep. The entity would be as a hungry wolf.
Wolf in the fold.
In that fold.
Nice.
You're engaging in sheer speculation.
Take a seat, dude.
Artifacts produced by hill people of Argus River region, planet Rigel 4.
Hengist? This is Jack the Ripper who's never been caught. Take that. He's dead.
He's dead, Jim.
But that's impossible.
Well, not impossible. He had to leave the body.
The entity is unquestionably controlling.
And the computer controls the ship.
This is an interesting one. I'm going to reserve judgment completely, but it's interesting. It's a cool concept. It's the alternative factor. It's back.
Surely it will try to breed fear and terror before it kills.
All hands, this is the captain. Stay at your posts.
Don't be scared. Jack the Ripper's loose. Don't let it scare you.
That would tranquilize an active volcano.
Good. Start distribution immediately. The longer we can hold back that fear,
starve it.
You'll all be safer here. Spock, come with me.
Really?
Well, aren't there certain mathematical problems which simply cannot be solved?
Indeed. If we could focus the attention of the computer on one of them.
That ought to do it.
You and all aboard your ship are about to die!
Try and cut that thing off.
This is the first time I heard a malfunction threaten us.
It's just Jack the Ripper. Only it's even worse than what we thought. It's a demonic entity that's immortal. But don't worry. Stay calm. Was that the Naked Gun? Leslie Nielsen's outside of the firework factory. Nothing to see here.
You cannot silence me. You cannot reach me.
You got the perfect person to stay awake in Spock, who has no fear whatsoever.
If you destroy the ship, you destroy yourself.
It's a hollow threat, Mr. Ripper.
I have existed from the dawn of time, and I shall live beyond its end.
I like that.
I shall feed. And this time I do not.
Did you guys see the gold shirt in the back who got the injection and smiled like he had just been given, like, cocaine? He's like, yeah.
Captain? Whoever he is, he sure talks gloomy.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Apparently, everyone's getting high.
But an armful of this stuff, I wouldn't be afraid of a supernova.
That's an interesting look. That was Bill Shatner. I was in Kirk. Bill Shatner gave there. He's like,
This is a Class A compulsory directive. Compute to the last digit the value of pi.
No.
The computer banks will work on this problem to the exclusion of all else until we order it to stop.
Yes, that should keep that thing busy for a while.
Complete computer control, Captain. The entity has fled.
who is it in?
Yes, but where to?
Jarrus. Prefect Jarrus.
Well, I'm willing to take a chance on Mr. Spock. Better give yourself a shot, Doc.
No, I don't think so. I think I ought to stay clear.
Do as I say. Extend your arm, Mr. Jarvis.
No, no, kill you all, die, make you suffer.
Ooh.
Everybody keep back. I'll kill her. I'll kill her. Keep back. You'll suffer. You suffer.
I love the stunt man for this guy. He's got like a bald cap on. Really nice.
Die, die, die. Everybody die.
Just transport him out into space.
Kill.
The entire craft is high. Love it.
Deep space. Full power. Widest angle of dispersion. Maintain.
Excited, Captain? I'll do it.
Widest level of dispersion. They're basically just saying, atomize this fucker.
Everybody die.
Spock's like, get the fuck away, Kyle.
You didn't have to shove me, Mr. Spock. I'd have gotten round to it.
Okay.
So what did you do with that thing, Captain? You send it back to the planet?
No, we beamed it out into open space, Scotty.
Its consciousness may continue for some time, consisting of billions of separate bits of energy floating forever in space, powerless.
Well, that's a hell.
Well, Mr. Spock, for the next 5 or 6 hours, we're going to have the happiest crew in space. Of course, we won't get much work done.
Captain, Since you came to Argelius to rest.
I know a cafe where the women are so...
I know the place, Jim.
Let's go see.
You gentlemen, in your condition, don't be ridiculous. Mr. Spock, this cafe has women that are so...
You are literally barking up the wrong tree.
No, I guess not. Alone? Felons.
I'd be like, you know what, fuck it, man. Give me the shot too. We're not getting anything done. All right, everyone, we just got done watching Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 14, Wolf in the Fold. And the only thing left to do is to talk about it. All right, everybody, we just got done watching Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 14, Wolf in the Fold. The premise of this one was really cool. The idea that Jack the Ripper is like an alien, murderer, feeding on fear. Really cool idea. I don't know if it could have been, I don't know what it was. There was something about it that it's almost like it needed just a little bit more for me. I mean, I'm going to be very honest. I'm getting spoiled now with the original series. I have to have moments we've seen such absolute brilliance from this show, brilliance that, isn't replicated in hardly any other thing that I've ever seen that has gone, stood the test of time for decades, has been built upon. This show is a foundational science fiction, tentpole. It's absolutely fantastic. So we've had this, so far, a season and a half into this journey, I have seen and witnessed some of the absolute best television and best stories I've ever experienced. So unfortunately, what that's done for me is it makes me more of a critic in that I am holding everything to this almost impossible standard of the excellence that the original series has shown. Here's, I think, what I was going on with this episode for me. That's the problem with putting somebody like a principal like Scotty as the victim. It would have worked maybe a little bit more. And again, I never ever want to try to like rewrite an episode. Robert Bloch wrote a great episode. I'm just saying that I'm trying to figure out for me what it would have been to kind of maybe suspend the disbelief a little bit more. And I think having it not be Scotty would have worked a little bit better for me. We knew Scotty didn't do it. We knew it, and even if he did physically do it, we knew that he wasn't in control when he did it. So, you're immediately now as the audience, you're going, okay, we have to watch them kind of prove that Scotty didn't do it, even though we know Scotty didn't do it. And so, it's just kind of coloring in the rest of the scene, the setting, what else is going on. They're giving us background information a little bit at a time. But when the focus is taken, for us, the audience, we have a different focus than what the show is at the front half of the episode. The focus of the front half of the episode is to prove Scotty's innocence. We did that in the first second. We were like, there's no way Scotty did this. So with us, then, we're kind of left in a state of limbo until the show catches up, if that makes sense. And normally there's nothing wrong with that, except I think it took an extended period of time. It was like, okay, we'll try this, and that didn't work. We'll try the psycho tricorder. That didn't work, someone dies. We'll try the seance thing. That didn't work, somebody dies. Okay, well, let's go up to the ship. We'll have a big trial. We did all that. We're not really any farther along than we were, other than now we know that Scotty at least doesn't believe he did any of this. And that's something that we knew 2 seconds after Scotty was revealed as the potential killer in the fog. And that's the thing that again, I think that's what my major problem with this is that, we had to wait. We had to wait for about half the episode. And then in the back half of the episode, business really picks up. We get to get some really kind of cool, interesting scenes of, the explanation of what this creature could live on for fear, and all the different places that had like, different attacks on women and like serial killer stuff, reports throughout the ages of similar, stabbings. And like I said, who am I to say that it could have been done better? But I have witnessed the season and a half now of some of the best television and best stories I've ever seen. So when I see it and it's not fair. It's not fair to Wolf in the Fold. It's not fair at all, because I'm applying other things and other, instances and experiences I've had with the earlier episodes and placing them on Wolf in the Fold and saying, how do you match up? And, Wolf in the Fold came in the middle of the pack for me. I think it could have potentially had a little bit more of a kick to it, because it was Jack the Ripper. And the idea that, I think that maybe a physical manifestation of Jack the Ripper, like a one-on-one with Kirk, kind of like like a almost not a fight, but like a conversation would have been really interesting. I don't know. And again, it's just me speculating on things that I would like, but I'm curious to see what did you all think about this episode? Because, we've had a couple episodes now where for me anyway, not having like a ton of Star Trek background outside of the movies and what I've seen so far, I hesitate to ever kind of get the pulse of what the Star Trek community is feeling. Like, I wonder if everybody else liked this episode, or did everybody else hate this episode, or hate this character, or this situation, or this sequence, or blah blah blah. I don't like to do that because, again, I don't want to poison the well for myself, and I want to be able to share my honest opinions. If I like something, and I think that the rest of the community hates it, I'm going to say that I liked it, even though that might, bring down people debating, conflicting opinions upon that. But at the same time, I often wonder because, there are episodes where I think this just missed for me. Did it miss for everybody else? Or I really like this episode, Friday's Child. Did everybody else? And you know what? I love the fact that we can all have kind of like agreed upon like favorite episodes, like, Balance of Terror and things like that. But then we all each have kind of like favorites that pop up. So whenever the comments hit YouTube, people are like, oh, I hated the episode that you liked, and here's the reason why. And I read them and I'm like, yeah, I understand that. I understand that opinion. And then people are coming through and being like, you know what? I actually did like this episode too. And I'm like, oh, cool, or I didn't like this episode either, which is very rare. I very rarely do I fully dislike an episode of Star Trek. And I think the only one, and I joked about it in this one, is the alternative factor is the one that really just didn't hit at all for me. I mean, even Charlie X, which I give a ton of, gunk to, and both of the Harry Mudd, episodes, I give, a bunch of crap to, but at the same time, I enjoyed them. I enjoyed them. Alternative factor was probably the only one that I didn't really enjoy. Like, would I watch it again? Yeah, but I'm not sure if it would gain any ground. But again, I'm not lumping Wolf in the Fold in with alternative factor by any stretch of the imagination. It's just one of those ones that I enjoyed and I think could have been a little bit better. But I'm, like I said, with the exception of kind of spinning our wheels in the beginning, I'm not really sure how you put it together better. It's just me being nitpicky and me being, unfortunately and fortunately, having seen so much great Star Trek, just being like, I can't really put you above this episode that I love, loved a little bit more. I'm starting to have a ranking system, friends, and it's just, it is what it is. It's when you watch great TV, you gotta rank stuff when you see them. And Wolf in the Fold came in middle of the pack for me. But again, I want to know what you all think, so please let me know. And of course, there's so much story that goes on beyond just what we've seen on the camera. We know we had Joseph Pevney back again. My guy really, really going to take out Mark Daniels for greatest director or most proficient director of Star Trek. And, Robert Bloch wrote this. But, did we have script problems? Did we have tension behind the scenes? Did everything go swimmingly? What did we have? Do we have co-star problems, or do we have co-star friendships? What went on? Well, friends, the only person that knows all of these things, the only being that knows all of these things, is the person we have to ask. And so, here we go. Q. Greetings, mon capitaine, and welcome to another installment of a Q&A. Friends, this is where, after having watched and reacted to an original series episode, I like to dive a little bit deeper and figure out what went on behind the camera, because as we've always said, most of the time, the story behind the camera is just as exciting as the one in front of the camera. But to keep myself from wandering off and talking for a couple hours, I've given myself 5 distinct categories on which to approach. The first, writer and director. Who were they? The second, guest stars. Did we have any? The third, of the core cast or the big 8, who appeared? Number 4, and the spiciest of all the categories, the production notes. What went on behind the camera? And last but certainly not least, category 5, a memorable quote from this episode. Let's get started. All right, everyone, for our first category, writer and director, who were they? Well, our writer for this episode was Robert Bloch, who actually wrote the short story for Jack the Ripper in which this was envisioned. So there was a deep understanding of both the motivations of Jack the Ripper and how this story was to progress because it came from the font of which this story was based on. So Robert Bloch, a admirable job adjusting this to Star Trek. Great, great stuff. And who was our director? I'll give you two guesses. Friends, yes, once again, we had Joseph Pevney appear in this episode. A telltale sign of old Joe Pevney is anytime you see a handheld or a little bit of a added extra shake in the camera to give it that organic or kind of a tense feeling, that's usually Joseph Pevney. But friends, will we ever get some more directors? I certainly hope so. But if we have to stick with Mark Daniels and Ralph Sininsky and Joe Pevney, well, those are three good ones to be stuck with. Stuck with. Friends, let's move on. All right, friends, and for our next category, guest stars, who did we have and who did they play? Well, first and foremost, we had John Fiedler as Hengist. I've seen him in a million things, but I think that this was a particularly interesting choice for the casting director because in picking him to go into this kind of prominent role, we were immediately, he sort of was typecast into being, with a meeker delivery and sort of not an imposing figure by any means. So we were kind of immediately drawn off the scent that he could potentially be the killer. And with the additional castings that we're going to mention in a bit, the focus, at least physically, seemed to speak to other guest stars as the killer. But let's keep moving on. Our next one is Charles McCulley, who played Vigo the Carpathian. I mean, Jarrus. Didn't that guy look like Vigo? I mean, Vigo. I thought it was great. I thought his character did a wonderful job too. I was drawn in immediately. I said, "Oh, that's your villain of the week." Nope, not at all. He was just a guy that was kind of drawn into all this stuff. And my other red herring, the one that I thought was a boxer, but I see no indication that he was, and I hope I don't get this character's name wrong or actor's name wrong, Charles Deerkop, who just passed away this year. He played Morla, and he did an excellent job of misdirection, as just by his very appearance and his delivery, even though I thought his delivery was very earnest and very well done, where he was, I couldn't possibly kill anybody, it was very, very believable. And also a little note on the actor, he went on to star in 3 Academy Award nominated movies, all of which had Paul Newman in them in The Sting, The Hustler, and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So very prolific career. Unfortunately, we lost him this year in 2024, but we'll always remember him for being a red herring here in Wolf in the Fold. Let's move on. And now for our category number 3, or our core cast, or Big 8. Of the Big 8, who appeared in this episode? Well, to recap, our Big 8 is Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Sulu, Scotty, Uhura, and for season 2, we added in Christine Chappell, who did appear in season 1, but was more prominent in season 2. We added her in there, and the newly arrived Chekhov. So who appeared in this episode of those Big 8? Well, we only had 5, as in this episode, we did not have Christine Chappell, though we had her voice as the computer. We did not have Chekhov, and we did not have Uhura. So not nearly enough for the Big 8. We'll see if we ever get a full vote again. Let's move on. And now for our next category, the juiciest of all the categories in production notes. What went on behind the camera? Well, let's find out. All right, friends, and for our first production note, I thought this one was really interesting because this is actually a suggestion or actually a written description by the writer, Robert Bloch, that did not get picked up. Bloch was very interested in making that initial set, that initial scene that we saw inside the, I'll be polite, dance hall. They wanted to make it not as alien or anything like that, but just have accents and kind of little bits of color that made it a little bit different from some place that you might normally expect. We saw one element of this whenever Scotty was clapping by banging on the table, and Kirk said, no, 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 no. Here they flicked the lights to show their, applause. So that was an interesting little thing, and probably a bit costly too, because you had to go around. That flicking light appeared on every table, and it was actually utilized. So it was a practical kind of application that really needed to be set up and staged. An additional one that I thought was really, really interesting was Robert Bloch wanted all of the crew, or every crew member that was present there, to be drinking a segregated colored liquor, or like a drink. That had a band of blue and a band of red and a band of yellow and a band of green. And the interesting thing about this was he wanted and actually had a scene written where every time you drank from a specific color, you had a different mood that would take over you. Here's the best part about this, friends, and you're going to love this because the censors came forward and said, no, 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 we don't want any of this. This looks like drug use. This doesn't look like drinking. And I can't state this enough. I need to make sure I get this quote exact because Gene Kuhn, when approached by the censors, and I'm assuming standards and practices and everybody, with this idea that this drink could actually be, misconstrued as some type of drug, Gene Kuhn, and I must make sure I get this exactly right, told them to their faces, "You are full of horseshit." End quote. I think that is, and of course, Gene Kuhn is sort of getting towards the end of his run with all of this. So I'm pretty sure Gene was a little fed up with somebody coming forward and saying that this drink looked like drug use. So full of horseshit. Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. You made my day. Let's move on. All right, friends, and for our second production note, a very interesting one here. If you start the clock at the beginning of what would be considered the hearing or the trial scene aboard the Enterprise and stop that clock whenever that scene is over and they leave that scene for the setting of the trial, is 15 minutes and 30 seconds, which is a Star Trek the original series record for one single scene in one single locale, uninterrupted by any other, away team or landing parties or anything like that. I thought that was very interesting, and they held on that bad boy for a while, even though, like I said in the reaction, we all knew it wasn't Scotty. Let's move on. And now, friends, for the third production note, this one is really interesting, and I can see why the censors kind of stepped in and said, no, 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 we're not going to do this. Because you're kind of bordering on things that could definitely cause some problems with the general audience, and here's why. If you remember, there's that one scene where I made the joke and basically said, oh my God, the alternative factor, it's back. They were looking at the monitor and there was kind of like, roiling colors and splashes and spiraling like windmills of different types of color and kind of lights kind of moving all around. Initially, at least according to what would be the written adaptation of this script, that was supposed to be a glimpse into either, and it was defined in two separate ways, but the one way is, I think, what kept it from being made. The first way was a glimpse into what the world or the mind of the entity that was Jack the Ripper. And you got to see all of these things, that it was thinking and it's evil and whatnot. But the other one, and Kirk actually mentions this in a line in the script when they say, what are we looking at? And Kirk says, it looks like we're glimpsing into hell. And you see all of these pains and torments and things that were in there that we just saw as splashes of color were supposed to be really defined and very visible as elements of what either would be seen as Jack the Ripper's thoughts or hell itself. Which, is there really a difference? Let's move on. Now for our fourth production note, and this one is, there's so many good ones for Wolf in the Fold that it actually, this Q&A from maybe the first one ever has actually elevated Wolf in the Fold a little bit in my mind just because of the flavor from behind the camera. Really great shit in this one, friends. So initially when we had our dancer, the woman that was murdered at the top of the episode by Scotty, basically initially they wanted a very kind of alien look for her. So when they went into the makeup room, she sat there for hours and she had feathers and different kind of almost like avian or bird elements added surrounding her face, on her eyebrows, on her eyelashes, almost covering her completely, where they would, the fan of feathers would kind of make up sort of like those old vaudevillian or old like Broadway big fans of feathers that they would used to use during dance routines and stuff. It was kind of an homage to that, only like a living person, like a living feather fan. And every time that they would come back onto the set, Joe Pevney, or the actress would come back onto the set, Joe Pevney would be like, that's too much. Go back and get some of that stuff taken off. So they would go back and they would take off a few of the feathers and come back, and Joe Pevney would say, no, that's too much. Go back. So on the very last day where they had time to shoot this dance number and this dance sequence, she came in wearing nothing, not nothing, but no makeup or anything like that. And Joe Pevney went, perfect, let's shoot. He didn't want any of the feathers. That was his only gripe. He thought that they didn't look right, and he didn't want to film them because of the, the movements and things like that could mess up if he wanted to do anything with like kind of camera tricks. And he just hated the feathers. And so until she was completely featherless, he had a problem. I love it, friends. Let's move on. And now, last but certainly not least, with our fifth and final production note, friends, we have a very interesting, all of these are so interesting, really, really good ones in this episode. But this is the very first episode, the very first, and we seldom talk about soundtracks or scores or musical elements. But with this one, this is the first episode that completely reconstituted older scores from other episodes, and the entirety of the music that appears in this episode had appeared in an earlier episode, in an earlier filmed episode. So it was very, very interesting. This is the first one that completely recycled all of that music. Interesting, friends. Let's move on. And now, friends, for our fifth and final category, memorable quote. What was the memorable quote from this episode? There were so many really, really good ones, and I kind of struggled for a little bit and went back and forth. But I thought, with this episode, it had so many interesting things in, the production notes and stuff. I decided to pick a kind of a lighthearted one as opposed to something that could have turned into the Jack the Ripper vibe a little bit. But this was the one that when Kirk asked McCoy if he had anything that could rob the creature of its sustenance or its fuel of fear and make the crew kind of, fearless, McCoy responded with the following as to the strength of the sedative he was thinking about using, or the drug he was thinking about using. I've got some stuff that would tranquilize an active volcano. Plum, I have no doubts. And friends, thus ends another installment of Q&A. Until we meet again, behave.